Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Zoom Into Wine. It's time for the show and your host, Ian Blackburn.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Thank you. I just muted everybody so you save yourselves the trauma of sound collision. My name is Ian Blackburn. I want to thank you guys for joining us today. We're going to have a really nice audience for our Rhone producers. Considering we're actually starting on time, we've probably got about another 25 people we're expecting. So let's hope they make time to join us, as we did get the kits out to over 55 trade. And I really want to thank you guys for doing this with us. There's really no, circular force between these 5 brands, except they're all dedicated to the Rhone, and they've got a unique story to tell. And we've got the vintners on the Zoom, and it's a great time to get the community of the trade together, to be able to look at each other's face and say hello. Something we don't get a chance to do very often these days. So I want to be the first to say welcome, and I hope you guys enjoy the presentation today. And we're going to talk with 5 different wineries on the Rhone category and get caught up on what's happening in this Rhone world that we're living in today. So without any further ado, our first winery today is RD Winery, and we're going to be tasting the 100 Knot Grenache from Rossi Ranch, Sonoma Valley, California, 2019. We've got a wholesale retail conflict on the pricing sheet. I think those prices are flipped on that sheet, and I need to correct that for the future. Apologize, but I think that the wholesale price is 26 and the retail price is 53. Otherwise, they're asking you to lose 20 something dollars a bottle. I doubt that's true. But we've done crazier things in this wine business, right? Well, from RD Winery, Timothy Milos is with us today. Hi, Timothy. How are you?
Ian, nice to meet you. Nice to see you in person.
You too. Thank you so much for joining us.
So RD's been around actually since 2011, but I came on board in beginning of the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, and Mylan, director, and I have been sort of reinventing the winery and the brand with a number of different ways. And one of the things I brought to them were wines from the Rossi Ranch, which Phil Couturi farms, and actually both the first and second wines come from that farming, though very different ranches, but both in the Sonoma Valley area. So Rossi is a very, very old historic vineyard. We can go through the slideshow. I'm not sure if you're to control the slides, Ian, or if I am.
How to do right now,
these things. I'm gonna either way. So RD's situated in the Napa Valley, at the entry of the Napa Valley. We make wines from both Napa and Sonoma, and actually with our Fifth Moon wines from around the state of California. Some interesting locations around the state of California. Our focus isn't exclusively in the Rhone, but there are a number of wines that we make that come from Rhone varieties with the Rhone hand. And in fact, for us, the 2019 was my first vintage in the Rossi Ranch. So if I go to the next slide,
beautiful facility though. I like the patio.
Yeah, and it's been, one of the sort of the misfortunes of starting, fresh, I think, is starting afresh into the middle of the 2020 COVID world. So our tasting room has been open sporadically during that. We'd love to see people come as we're opening back up again. And we're an easy way to come in into and out of Napa Valley. And have a number of things we can show from around the area. Rossi Ranch, I think a number of the Sonoma County folks know, it's a very old property. There's still some very old vines. Infidel, that a number of wineries in Sonoma County and elsewhere center some of their wines around. The Rhone plantings are relatively new, and they're about between 7 and 10 years old. So we source from a number of different head train Grenache blocks, plus Mourvedre, plus Syrah. And 2019 being our first vintage, the Grenache and Syrah were coming in more or less in line time-wise. The Syrah was a week or so later, just the way things fall. And I had initially intended on doing it all whole cluster foot treaded, but Mother Nature doesn't always play along. The set was not great in the Grenache, and we'd certainly got enough fruit, but it was about this half fruit and half stem. So we decided on the fly to destem the Grenache, foot tread the Mourvedre, co-ferment the Mourvedre and Grenache, and then the Syrah was 100% foot treaded, brought in separately. And be a little shot of Arturo and Connor, the assistant winemaker, Connor, our seller hand, happily foot treading. Although that might actually be Pinot Noir in any event. So it's small lots. Management of Grenache, I think the winemakers might talk about management of Grenache tannins is fairly complicated. I think Grenache is one of the harder varieties to really express in full balance. Tannins can often get out of control, and so we were doing a kind of classic method of delistage a couple times a day early on in fermentation, and rather than punch downs and pump overs. So a lot of aerative handling early on in its life, reasonably long time on the skins, and then pressed off and to barrel unracked in its life in barrel. So that was the handle of that. We'd start doing a mix of a couple of different fermenters, but some inoculated, so you get some of that complexity as well. So where we are on the next slide. My thought with Grenache is trying to get the level of extraction and flavor density and texture from the variety, from the grapes, without over extracting. And I don't know how others will talk about in terms of how they're handling it, but that's to get the full expression of Grenache. I see Rossi as being very aromatic in its expression of Grenache, as opposed to a lot of deep density. And so we're using some of the Syrah and Mourvedre to fill those things in. Go on the next slide. And so it gives you the idea of the blends and all the rest. I'm not quite sure how much time we have here, Ian. I know I was told I had a short.
You're doing good. You're doing good. No time.
No time constraints. All right. So
there are some, but you're not pushing them yet. That's
all right. So it's I find the variety to be incredibly expressive and very distinctive of place. People talk about Pinot Noir as being very terroir driven, and I think Grenache has that same kind of transparency that both clonal variations and site variations are incredibly distinctive in the expression of the fruit from any site. And I think Rossi has a very distinctive fingerprint, and I think the other wines we see today all have that sense of place is transparent in the wines. Certainly, like Pinot, handling how we make the wines bears an enormous impact on its ultimate expression. But I think Grenache is like Pinot Noir in those things. In that it's not any harder to make than anything else, but everything that you do shows. Every choice that you make as a winemaker becomes transparent in the final wine, and you don't necessarily know the end result of those choices until you're at the end. And so you have to be very cautious about how you produce that. And I think maybe people have different experiences, and I'd love to hear other thoughts. But having worked with Grenache now from different locations for about 15 years, that's what I see. It's not the main. I'm probably more a cab winemaker than anything else. But that's what I see as a variety, and I make it completely different than I would approach Cab. Just understanding its textural differences, its phenolic differences, and coming to it from its own unique position. Ian, any thoughts? Any questions?
I think the wine is a great place to start. It's got a great balance and finesse, and even though it's 15% alcohol, I think that's a relative number in the world of Grenache, and you've got really a beauty here. And I think that there's something very delicate about it at the same time as it being, significant in size and structure. So there's just a really nice daft touch on this particular offering. And this is my first time trying it, so I'm really I would love to hear others' comments, and let's give the winemaker a little bit of feedback if you have a moment. Anyone can chime in.
We're all trying to find the mute buttons. One of my thoughts was that one of the goals, I think, in the approach with Grenache is to maintain that delicacy and finesse. And I'm not going to pretend that I achieved my goals, but that is the thing that I think it has to offer, that it, as a variety that is one of its standout characteristics is intensity in the presence of delicacy. And I don't know if other people have that kind of different view of that.
Yeah, I would comment that I love that it does have such a fruit presence without anything taking away from that finesse and that elegance. But there's this bright hit of fruit, which is so beautiful.
I agree.
Thank you.
Finesse for a young wine too. I mean, finesse is a great word. It stands out for such a young wine.
It's true, Larry. Yeah, this is a 19er.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised at how elegant it is.
Yeah.
I mean, so much of that, I think, is a function of handling, of rather than doing punch downs for the first 2 weeks, it was full Delestag every day. And that amount of air helps moderate the phenolic profile and how it evolves. The fact that it was on whole cluster with the Mourvedre, so about 25% whole cluster, provides a different layer of texture to it that I think Grenache often can get kind of gritty in its youth, and I find those whole cluster wines being sometimes more easy to get into.
Tim, how many cases did you make of this one?
Oh geez, it's only a couple of hundred. I think we're 300 cases all in.
Fabulous.
Really well done, buddy.
Thank you.
And I'm very excited. You are distributed by
Vintage.
By Vintage. There it is, Vintage Wine Marketing.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're interested, give your Vintage a holler.
Please. I'd love to work with you, with all the folks here. So we're being a new brand. We're definitely we're making our way into the marketplace.
What sort of library is there? Are there 18s? Are there 17s?
This is literally the first wine from this vineyard for us. We have wines from 17 forward, but for Roskin Ranch and the Grenache, this is our very first vintage, and tragically 20 was lost to fire. So we'll be looking forward to making a 21.
This is a nice wine. I'm sure it'll age very well too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? I mean, no secrets in what I do, honestly. So happy to answer it.
Well, thank you, Timothy. Really and wonderful to taste wine with you. I want to again welcome everybody. Please use this time to ask questions. The chat box has been full of comments too, Timothy, so take a look. Some really nice comments from some of our trade today. And just be assured that your wine was really well enjoyed. All right, we move on. We are now going to visit Lassiter, and just a little housekeeping. Sorry about a couple of errors that we made on the printing. I just noticed now, thanks to Jake, that we go 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and we only put
We only produced 5 vials today, so the 4 is going to be force majeure and 5 is Jada. Okay. So apologize on that error. The other error was on the price sheet, the sheet itself that I printed anyway, the brochure. We flipped the wine retail and wholesale number. So that, and that's that we did that universally and fairly to all wineries. All right, moving into our next brand, Lassiter. Today, Daniele Langlois. Did I pronounce that correct, Daniele?
You got that last name, but my first name's just Danielle.
Fuck.
Okay. Danielle. Pleasure to have you on the Zoom. And are you Zooming today from Sonoma as well?
Yes, I'm at Lassiter Family Winery, and today we're actually bottling all of our 2019 Rhone wines. So a very exciting day today.
Awesome. Well, I'm moving into the glass number 2, and all of the winemakers, by the way, get the tasting kits to be able to taste all of the wines with us. So ask questions, make comments, let's share some ideas, beliefs, philosophies, whatever rocks your boat about Rhone wines. It's a really cool group that we've got together today. So please be inspired to share. All right, the show is yours, Daniele. Danielle, I'm gonna go into the slideshow, and you can tell me when to change the slide.
Okay, well, so we are, well, I'm from Lassiter Family Winery, and we're in Glen Ellen, California. John and Nancy Lassiter are our owners, and we have 2 programs here where we make various wines. We have our Rhone program where we make a Merlot-based, a Cab-based, and a Malbec-based blend. And then we have our Rhones where we're making 2 different Grenache-based wines. One is the Chemin de Fer, which you'll be tasting today. The other is the Dentelle de Fer. And now we're making a Syrah-based Rhone blend as well. So the Chemin de Fer, we have several different clones on the property, the Enpave A, B, C, and D, and Albin and Old Hill clones of Grenache. And then we have some Mourvedre and Syrah as well. The Lassiters fell in love with the Rhone region when they were traveling through there, and are just really committed to making Rhone wines. They're some of John's favorite wines that we make. Honestly, I can't keep the Chemin de Fer on the shelf for critic tastings. He often just comes and steals it. So, this wine in 2017, which you all know was a crazy year. So we didn't get all of our clones off the vine before the fire, but we were able to make a 50% Grenache, 37% Mourvedre, and 13% Syrah blend. We were able to blend with our new consultant who was here for the full harvest in 2018, Philippe Combi, who some of you may be familiar with. He is a French Rhone consultant who's just really well known, an expert blender. So he was brought on board to blend the 17 with us. The wine's kind of got a deep, nice garnet color, and it has raspberry spice on the nose, and then berry flavors. The Enpave clones are really known for their big kind of berry flavors that they produce. I almost get like red fruit leather, like the healthy fruit roll-ups that you used to get at Whole Foods. That's what it always reminds me of. And that Mourvedre can provide more of that mid-palate, that nice kind of spice, maybe a little meaty flavors. And then the Syrah just always brings that color, great color in. So the label you see, so we have artist, a local artist, Dennis Szyminski, who designs all of our labels. And this Chemin de Fer label is an ode to the trains that travel through the south of France, and also a train that John Laster owns here on the property. So that's his little steam engine coming through the vines. We offer, so when our wines go out for orders or clubs, we always offer these profile cards, which gives alcohol information, pH information, TA, and then a bunch about the vineyard, of information about the vineyard, and some tasting notes on the wines. Our vineyards are farmed by Phil Katuri, who also farms Rossi Ranch, guru of organic vineyards. So we're really committed here to being stewards of the land, and really in the winery, our main focus is to really just give you what the land produces each vintage. So we try and really stay away from doing a lot of additives or anything like that. Yeah, next slide.
Sure.
You can skip the
So
video.
we have a little video. You want to just see it? It's got the. So this is just
Go ahead.
our estate. You can see the vineyard here. Come here to have this amazing tasting experience. Everybody should come if they have a chance. We are doing tastings outside. But you can see driving in, we've got this Grenache plants over here. And we do a tour of, we can actually do tours of the vineyard now, which is great. So we have a little COVID buggy that can take people in it. And yeah, does anybody have any questions about the wine or?
Totally get that fruit roll up.
Yeah. I mean, those on top blends are really just powerhouses. We so in 2017 we have cement tanks, but we didn't use them just in case there was any smoke issues. But we do use both new French oak, used oak, and then puncheons, and then cement barrel for aging. So that's been really fun to taste through the different mediums that we can use and have them as each little different spices we can put in our spice box to blend the wine.
Lots of very ripe fruit, black and blue ripe fruits on the palate for sure.
So
what kind of wood influence are you using here?
I'm sorry?
And I would just ask about the wood that you're using in your.
Oh yes. So we use a lot of Francois Frere, some mostly Francois Frere, and then some Saury, Saury.
Yeah.
And then Chassagne as well.
Is there a forest that Rhone varieties love more than other forests? And I'll ask that to any of our winemakers.
We're not particularly picky about that. I just we're definitely experimenting with different barrel makers, but not necessarily particular to one forest. If anybody else wants
Do you have
to.
any favorites, Timothy, on yours?
I'd love to actually hear what other people have to say. My take is it really depends on the style of the wine that you're trying to make, so that can be very light impact to very heavy impact. And I've seen people use the range of things from Frere, which is fairly impactful, and I like that character. We use some of that too, to things that are more subtle in spice, to some very, very low impact barrels, so like Austrian wood and low toast Austrian wood. And the impact really can change the style of the end wine. So I think it really that Grenache will take all those different things, but it really will affect what your end goal is, what your end wine is. So it's not, I don't know if there's one. I see there's a lot of bigger impact barrels often being used, and then I see some of the newer producers using very low impact or just larger larger formats, so that in fact the wood impact is quite low. That'll be my take.
So
I don't know if you're doing large formats at all, Danielle.
Yes, so we use a lot of different, actually a lot of punch-in. We try and keep our Grenache program low, about 30% top new oak, just because Grenache is so delicate that if you over oak it, it's easily taken over, the nuance. So we play around a lot more with the new oak that we put on the Mourvedre and on the Syrah. And in the Syrah we use Mérieux, Valérine, some heavy hitters out there with some heavy toast, because we feel like the Syrah can really take it. And then we just kind of decide from there which of those barrels will fit into the Rhone blend that's Grenache centered. Because I don't know if the other winemakers will agree with me, but Syrah easily takes over the Grenache and Mourvedre if you just get 1% too many. So,
sure. Very much so. And I'm with you. I think that because Grenache is so delicate, that those large formats really are a good marriage.
Yeah.
We use a lot of punch-ins also.
We like to play a lot with second and third year uses. So we even have. We are now using these Ovium egg barrels, which are made with the Fibonacci sequence in mind, which is that golden rule spiral that you find in nature, which is super geeky. I fell for the gimmick, but they make great wines, but we're using them for the new oak for our white program. And then after 3 years, we're rotating them into Grenache. So 2020 would have been our first year to use them. Unfortunately, we will not be using them for the Grenache this year, but hopefully 2021, we're very excited about that. So, the Rhone varietals are really fun because we do get to play with so many different mediums of how we're storing the wine and how we're fermenting the wine.
Yeah, I saw you had the Dente de Fer and the Chemin de Fer.
Yeah, so
how are they different?
So the Dentel de Fer is a little bit lighter bodied. It's not a light bodied wine. I would call it maybe medium, but it has a lot more spice box, and it has a lot more whole cluster element to it. And it's a little bit more perfumed on the aromatic side. So this is like the Chemin de Fer is like our big hitter berry, kind of more California style. And then the Dentel de Fer would be more the Beaucastel, a little bit more Mourvedre in there. And it's mainly made of the Alban and Old Hill clones, which do really well with whole cluster fermentation on our property. So.
Very nice. Well done. We'll also tell all of our trade. We handle these wines, make sure we taste through them, hoping to avoid any issues, and then we put them in these food safe jars, seal them up all the way, and get them out to you. But these were all poured Monday night, so these have been in this jar since then, and I think they're showing great. There's no excuses at all. Just really good decantation, I think, and very fresh, and both of them are beautiful, and very reminiscent of how they tasted at opening. So I just want to say that I'm happy to see this varietal is doing well in this container as well.
I do want to add one last thing. In 2018, I know you're tasting the 17, but in the 2018 year, we adopted new fermentation style protocols from Philippe Cambie. And so now we're making the wine actually a lot like Tim does, where we do extended maceration for about 30 days, delistage with micro oxidation. Sorry, that word is
easy for you to say.
And then we're using our cement vessels to ferment in. and as much whole cluster we can experiment with that the vintage will allow. So
Cool. And are either of you playing with stem inclusion on these grape varieties?
yes, yeah. So like I said, as much whole cluster. So we'll put the stem in there as long as it's allowed. This year we were going to do a lot of 100% whole cluster just to see how it turned out, but unfortunately our dreams were dashed. So
yeah,
maybe next year.
Yeah, there's another winery I work with where it's essentially a playground for me, and so we've done all whole cluster foot tread, half whole cluster, all mix and match of everything, and a bunch of different varieties, and almost uniformly, all things being equal, whole cluster has been our favorite. Again, different fruit sourcing, and that makes a huge difference setting in everything. But with Grenache, we found really great results. I would have done it in 19, but the clusters were literally half stems, and that was more than I wanted to put in the mix. So
I think it gives this great like candied, like almost like a candied rind flavor to the wine, and this extra spice that you just, I don't know, it makes it so much more interesting. And then we get a lot more almost cranberry grapefruit flavors as well that make the wine just really interesting.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you both. Let's move on to wine number 3. And
Danielle, I have one question for you.
Oh, yes.
Would you be kind? It's Anthony Blue.
Hi.
Would you be so kind as to say hello to John and Nancy for me?
Anthony Blue. I will write that down. Absolutely.
Please, yeah. I miss him.
I will. Oh, and I do want to say, like, that's one, because Tim, that's one of the things that's great about the Lasseters is they're consistently pushing us to, experiment as much as we can. And that's why we actually came up with our second label, Dantel de Fer. We did an experiment with whole cluster, and Nancy absolutely loved it. And she was like, this isn't a once in a blue moon thing. She was like, I'm going to make a whole nother label because I love where this wine went. So
cool.
Great. That's great.
Thank you. Well,
and just a last question, waiting for him to jump in. Hope you don't mind.
Go for it.
Danielle, if you could address just on the basis that you brought up the topic, but if any of the winemakers that had the experience of 17 and any of the marketing difficulties that may come along with smoke taint fire issues and whatnot, can you address perhaps what collectively the area, the wineries in the area are doing to educate the marketplace over what was produced that year, or specifically if you just want to address what Lasseter is doing, is this essentially is there marketing around it? Is there educational around it? Or is this going to be the glass will speak for itself?
Well, I can speak smallly to what the marketing team is doing. Maybe Jen can jump in with me, but we only made wine in 17 that was not affected by the fire. We did bring in grapes and we tried to go through them, but it was just, the grapes that were affected, the lots that were affected just had that ashtray flavor at the end. So we just weren't even going to mess with them. And luckily enough, we have the ability that we could just say, you know what, we're not going to make this wine and kind of bulk off the rest. So I think that that's our main message in 17 to our consumers, is that the only wine we made in 17 was wine that was not affected by smoke taint or by the fires at all. So Jen, I don't know if you want to jump in and if we have any other message or.
I'm sensitive to time, but it's an important thing. So I'll just say that, yes, the wine has to speak for itself, and it's just important to give incredible confidence to anybody tasting it. You are all aware of these things, and probably more so than consumers. Lasseter has been quietly selling all DTC pretty much, except for some restaurants where John and Nancy may travel to. And so it's nice. The wines aren't, oversaturated in the market by any stretch. But so here we have the opportunity to really talk about those stories. And to the extent that people are aware, I mean, one thing that I know is this is a new normal. And I worked for I consulted for somebody whose entire vineyard burned down in Napa. And so we need to be very forthcoming and front and realize this is not a one-time thing. This is us being able to be confident in our wines, confident about what we did and decided not to make each year, and to really make this something where people can just still get through all that and taste the wines and be confident in them. So I can only say it's, I think, our job to really have integrity and to be able to speak to that and know that it's going to continue, and that's just where we're at. No?
And I just want to ask you guys, I mean, how close, I mean, a lot of grape varieties were harvested, you know, well before the fires of 17. 18 really didn't have fire issues that I know of anywhere. 19, maybe. 20, of course, we're dealing with that. I think by the time we get to 2020, we'll, you know, the question will be whether you made a wine or not. But I don't think that the vintages in California, you know, from many producers are automatically defaulting to, you know, we made wine whether the fires impacted them or not. I really think that most of the fruit was in.
Yeah. In 17, definitely. In 20, it's a little bit trickier because, you know, there were fires in August, that where we, you know, received smoky days on. Now, whether the smoke impacted the grapes enough to give you that smoky taste on the palate, you know, we're finding that they did not until, you know, we stopped harvesting in the glass fire. Because we were like, you know what, at this point where in our location, there's no way we're going to be able to make wine after the glass fire. But up until then in 20, you know, John and Nancy went into R&D. They're like, bring in these wines and let's see what we can make. You know, and so far tasting them after they've been through primary and secondary fermentation, we've got some good stuff. And 20 was a hard year for the vineyard. I mean, that heat spike that was 2 weeks long, and you know, it was tough to get that fruit off and to get it ripe. So, but I'm excited to see what we can do with what we brought in 20. It's really hard to lose a harvest. Our other consulting winemaker, Tony Biaggi, puts it like this: you know, as a winemaker, you have maybe 30 harvests in your lifetime to give what you can, to show what you can do. And so to lose one is a big bummer, you know.
For sure. Well, thank you very much for your comments and questions. We're going to move into wine number 3, and Chateau Lenerth. This is a beautiful wine imported by Co-Brand. So we have the very capable Rachel on the Zoom with us tonight. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Ian, and the whole Wine LA team for having Chateau Lenerth here today. I am the French category specialist for Co-Brand, so please go ahead and pour wine number 3 in your glass if you haven't already. And we're going to switch gears to the Southern Rhone and dive into the story of Chateau Lenerth. Ian, do you want to put up the slideshow?
Right. I'm so excited to taste the wine, I forgot.
No problem. Okay, yeah, you could go forward to this next slide. Okay, so Chateau Lenerth has a very long heritage. So they are one of the oldest estates. They have been in existence as early as 1560. And then in 1870, Commander Joseph Ducasse bought Chateau Lenerth, and Chateau Lenerth was actually the first estate to export their wine outside of France. And they also were the first to practice destemming 100% in their vines since the 1800s. And then in 1985, the Richard family took ownership of the property. So you can go ahead to the next slide. So this is the beautiful location of Chateau Lennert. In 1991, they expanded their holdings in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, which helped them create one of the largest estates in the southern Rhone. So they have now about 230 acres, 57 single plots, and they have all 13 grape varieties on the property. The four main types of soils, of course, as you know, sand, marl, clay, and limestone. And then the terroir is very special, as you know, in Châteauneuf-du-Pape. So the vineyards cover about 92 hectares, which is about 227 acres. 60 of those hectares, or about 150 acres, surround the chateau. And then the other 32 hectares, or that's 80 acres, surround the famous plateau of La Croix. So the plots are really exceptional, very sloped terroir with soils of sandy clay, and then larger, as you know, round, worn Guyette stones. They cover the whole range of diversity of soils. So around the chateau, we find majority sand, marl, clay, and limestone pebbles. And the red clays are so rich in minerals, iron and magnesium, which really helps the vines. The Guyette stones really are a great protection for the vines because it allows them to be a nice water source despite the punishingly hot climate. So the climate here is Mediterranean. There's over 300 sun days in a year, and of course with the influence of the Mistral. The 32 hectares, and again, that's about 80 acres. They surround the La Croix, and it's covered mostly in clay soil with flat pebbles. The winery has been certified organic since 1998. And then here is a really great picture of the vineyards. So it's located in the heart of Châteauneuf-du-Pape. So that's about 225 acres total of Chateau Lennert vineyards. And then that single block, again, located around the famous plateau of La Croix. So the average vine age here is about 40 years old. And the wine you have in your glass is an average between 80 and 100-year-old vines. And all the terroirs here come from a single estate. And for me, as a sommelier, when we're thinking about classic wines, wines that come from single terroir and one estate really show the most classically in the glass. For example, one of my favorites, Chateau Reyes, is red clay sand, old vine, and from a single estate. And then we can go to the next slide. So here are here's the information on the Cuvée de Cadets. So this is a step up from their main Châteauneuf-du-Pape. This is a very special cuvée coming from just a 20-acre vineyard, I'm sorry. And again, they're about 80 to 100-year vines. The three grapes are co-fermented. They're all hand harvested. It's about 35% Syrah, 30% Grenache, and then 33% Mourvèdre. And this is all wild yeast fermentation native to the vineyard. The wine is aged for about 12 months in 100% small French oak barrels. Again, certified organic. And so these are just some of the key takeaways from Chateau Lennert. It's family owned for 3 generations, over 5 centuries of history. They just have a beautiful link with the Chateauneuf-du-Pape appellation starting in the 1500s. They acquired about 225 acres. These are old vines and single estate, and this is a chateau that has all 13 grapes on the property from all 4 of the soils. They also have a beautiful white Chateauneuf-du-Pape. If you're interested in trying that, I'd love to taste you on that as well, but I know our focus is on our red Chateauneuf-du-Pape today. So, but this is a very classical style producer with a great winemaking team. The winemaker's name is Remy Jean, and he has had a long history in the Château-Lenert family, and then, you know, in making wine in the south of France. And then this is just a quick virtual tour of the winery. Although we can't be there in person today, it's just nice to have a little snapshot of what it would be like to be in Chateauneuf-du-Pape today. And as you can see, it's such a really visceral experience. I could really feel the sun shining on my face when I look into these pictures. And then at the bottom right here are just a few of the different labels that they produce. This is their entire line.
Beautifully done. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And Rachel, you've been with Co-Brand now for how long?
About 2.5 years now.
Great. Well, I'm really impressed. You put that slideshow together like a pro, and really nice classic mentions there. This is the higher tier of Chateauneuf-du-Pape, so we appreciate you bringing the beast.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So thank you for bringing it out. Does anybody have any questions for Rachel? That's of course distributed by, I can't say Young's Market anymore. I have to say.
Rachel, hi, it's Anthony Blue.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Anthony.
Nice to hear you, since I communicate with you often, but not this way. Anyway,
Yes.
How many cases were produced of this this particular wine?
So this is a very small production. I know in all of California, we only have about 16 cases. They only gave us about 20, so 4 have been sold already.
Spectacular wine. Boy.
Beautifully done. Thank you very much. We're moving on to wine number 4 or 5, depending on where you're looking, but 4 in the vial. Todd Alexander is a winemaker with us today. And I thank you, Todd, for your patience. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm doing well. How are you? Hope everyone's doing well.
Thank you so much. We'll move right into the PowerPoint, and
Sure.
Appreciate you being up here fourth.
Yeah. So hi, everybody. I'm Todd. I'm the winemaker and director for Force Majeure up in Washington/Oregon. So a little bit of a different perspective on Rhone varietals here. And I'll just give you a quick sort of rundown on the history. I moved to Washington in 2014. I was the winemaker at Bryant Family Vineyard in Napa at the time, and I moved in 2014 to come up to the Pacific Northwest and see what we could do with winemaking and grape growing, and see what we could do to push the envelope. So pretty exciting. It feels like it's been a whirlwind. It's hard to believe I've been up here for 7 vintages now, but Force Majeure started with an 18-acre site in the Red Mountain AVA, planted to a variety of Rhone varietals and then also Bordeaux varietals. Now we have 3 estate sites, and we just built our new winery, finished in 2019 in the Walla Walla Valley on the Oregon side of the border. So we're technically an Oregon winery, but we have property in Washington and property in Oregon. And that picture you're looking at right now, not the one of me, but of the beautiful vista, that's an area we're going to be planting this year. It's an area we call the North Fork, and it's sort of, it's about 15 minutes east of where the winery is. It's in Oregon. It's about 2,200 foot elevation at the top. So it's a higher elevation. We're thinking we can dry farm it. It's a pretty exciting area. That's sort of what brought me up here, was the excitement of all these kind of untapped areas and all the potential that exists. And there's already been a really, solid foundation of grape growing and winemaking here to expand upon. So if we go on to the next slide, that's sort of a shot of the Syrah at the Force Majeure Red Mountain Estate Vineyard. That's about 45 minutes from the winery. And Red Mountain's about 3,000 acres. It's the warmest AVA in the state. One thing to know about all the wines basically in Washington is it's all volcanic soil. So these are grown on a combination of concreted ash, fractured basalt. The pH of the soils is 8.2. So higher pH soils than you're used to seeing in California. Typically they're around 6. And I've heard Phil Couturi's name a couple times. We're actually working with him up here too. So he's kind of everywhere. And I just wanted to say to Danielle, before I forget, I don't know if you remember, but a couple years ago, I crashed your blending session with you and Phil and Philippe and Tony. So anyway, just want to throw that there. So we have this is southwest facing slope here you're looking at. Gets a lot of sun. It's metered by 4. So each vine's on a stake, serrachulas training, and really low yields off of that. The high density helps shade the fruit since it is pretty sunny. And yeah, so we do, most of our Syrah comes from that hill. And as you kind of come down the hill, there's deeper soils like you'd expect from dirt that's sloughed off the hillside over the years. And we have Mourvèdre, we have Grenache planted in some sandier deposits, and we have Bordeaux varietals in certain pockets too. We have about 9 different soil types. And there's a big event called the Missoula floods that happened about 14,000 years ago that churned up the soils all through the Columbia Basin, water up to 1,200 feet deep, granite erratics coming from glacial Lake Missoula that were deposited all over. So you'll find granite, you'll find quartz, you'll find things like that in the soils too, but they weren't there before the floods. So it's a pretty interesting site. We can go down to the next slide. We have seasons. Yeah, so this is just another shot. So you can see the sort of the lower right corner, more of that, how the Syrah is trained on stakes. Yeah, we can just move on to the next slide, talk a little bit about the wine here. So one of the things I wanted to do was, when I first got up here, it was kind of like throwing things up and seeing what sticks. And all the winemakers will know what I'm talking about. When you work with a new site that has no history of like winemaking behind it, this was a new estate program that I took on. It's sort of like you're trialing barrels, you're trialing different things in the cellar as far as fermentation goes, skin contact times, maceration protocols, extraction protocols, et cetera, and sort of refining that every year. Then you're making changes in the vineyard every year. So it takes a few years before you start to understand what normal means. And one of the things I noticed right away was the Mourvèdre up here has a lot of potential. It's a really exciting varietal for this region. I continue to be really impressed by it every year I work with it. Normally, this is a 2017, the wine's called Parvada. Normally this wine has about 65 to 70% Mourvèdre in it, but we actually bottled 100% Mourvèdre bottling separately from one block of the vineyard because it was so good in 17. Helen Keplinger, who some of you might know, she tasted it and was like, this is the best domestic Mourvèdre I've ever had. And she's known for Rhone varietals, her Rhone varietal expertise. So that was pretty exciting. And we didn't do it in 18. We bottled it again, and we're going to bottle it for the 19 vintage. But this wine always is kind of led by Mourvèdre, and then Grenache, Syrah, little Cinsault, and Counoise as well. And the Grenache gets a little bit of whole cluster treatment. The Syrah typically is destemmed, and I might do a little bit of co-fermenting with Syrah and Grenache, just depending on how timing goes. Everything, I don't have like a recipe. It's all just kind of like every year is a little different. So you just have to be dynamic and kind of adaptable to what you're doing. But the Mervet up here tends to be, everyone knows it's real large berries, very juicy, not real thick skin, at least for us. And we have it in a sandy deposit, planted in a sandy deposit in our vineyard. So it's more finesse driven. In the fermenters, it's like smoked meat, white pepper, and grapefruit peel is like coming out of the fermenters. The Grenache is more like the strawberry, red fruit, gets into the darker fruit spectrum. The Syrah gives you more of the power, the flesh, the muscle in this wine. But this is, a really, really fun wine to make, and hope you enjoy it. And everything's kind of, I do native yeast now. I do fermentation in concrete vats. I have some stainless steel too, and some bins. I've moved to mostly large format oak, and I'll use anywhere from 10 to 30% new in the final blend. Typically, the Grenache doesn't see any new oak, and I use thicker staves. I do have a little bit of Austrian oak like Stockinger that I use. Syrah, I'll use some barriques, but I'm moving now toward Foudre, and I have demi-muids and puncheons, 300 liter, 400 liter, everything kind of in between. Once used, twice used, neutral and new. So that's sort of how I do it. And yeah, I think that's it. Next slide is actually a good shot of some of the soil types here. So you got the fractured basalt, a couple of photos of that. And then on the right is that kind of concreted ash that's just old ash deposits from volcanic activity. And I think on the volcanic note, one thing that's kind of consistent through the wines from this side especially is a salinity, and I think Jeb Dunnick quoted it best, like he said, liquid rock. And I think that really comes through. So and then you can just, that's sort of the vista from Red Mountain. We're up on a hill. Red Mountain's actually not a mountain, it's a hill. And we're up on the crest of it, and we kind of oversee the whole AVA, which, like I said earlier, is about 3,000 acres, and now is pretty much all planted out. And then the next photo is just another view of the Syrah. You can see some of the big rocks that are in the vineyard, and that's about it. Got a picture of tendrils and a picture of concrete tanks. Yeah.
Great job.
Thanks.
Well, beautiful packaging, beautiful wine.
I suppose I should say real quick that in case you're wondering about the label, it's sort of an abstract representation of the estate of vineyard, the hillside. Yeah, here it is right here.
Really cool.
That's what that's all about. The Syrah and the Parvada label, we have an estate Syrah too, so that one's, they're like mirror images of each other. But that's what that packaging is.
Awesome. Great to taste the wine with you and learn more about your projects. Keeps coming up, and I thank you.
Oh no, happy to do it. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Authentic Wine Selections represents you, Robert Mortensen.
Mm-hmm.
His contact information is in the brochure. We're looking at 49 wholesale, 70 retail. Beautiful. Jada is up next, and thank you very much, Todd. Josh Harp, pleasure. Thank you for waiting for us, sir.
No worries. Thanks for having me. Actually, I had a quick question for Todd, real quick.
Sure.
I was wondering, with that concreted ash, are you having to break up the ground at all to penetrate that, or?
No, you can actually like take that stuff and snap it.
Okay, I was wondering how hard it was.
It's not super dense. Yeah, it's pretty small, and it's really breakable.
Oh, that's great. And is it pretty deep, or is there a different layer or like a limiting layer?
There's a couple of layers. Yeah, there's a couple of layers, but you can dig down like 8 feet or so, and about 4 feet down there's a pretty big layer. And I guess the Mount St. Helens eruption in whatever that was, 1980, that laid a bunch of ash in that whole area. So, and I guess it was like a foot thick.
Yeah, that makes sense. My brother's actually a volcanologist, so he
really?
So this is very fascinating to me.
Well, I don't know that much, but
no, no one does. Well, that's awesome. Well, great. Well, yeah. Well, thanks again. If you want to bring up that first slide, Ian, I'll reintroduce myself.
Yeah, pleasure to have you on the Zoom. It's been years since I've been to Jada, so I'm real excited to be with you today. And
yeah, thank you. So I should probably clarify. It is pronounced Jada for those who have not been to our winery, but we're also very relaxed about those things, so it's not an issue. I wanted to start off with this picture of the top of our vineyard. I think it's kind of a cool way to capture what I'm going to talk about throughout the presentation, and why our particular estate vineyard is a special place to grow high quality grapes in Paso Robles. But you can really see the influence of the ocean there with the fog rolling in over the hills, and then just the elevation differences. And also in that tree line behind the Jada is our tasting room. So you can't quite see it, but this just really kind of shows you what you would see coming out in our section of the Willow Creek sub-AVA of Paso Robles. And if you want to go to the next slide, awesome. So I figure we'll start with something in hand with the wine they have in front of us, our 2017 Hell's Kitchen. This is Jada's take on a GSM blend, but as you see, we don't have Mourvèdre on the property, so we don't have Mourvèdre in the blend. We were caught up in the, I don't know how you say it, the lucky mistake that other wineries around us experienced around, I think it was 2000. Graciano was planted in the vineyard, but labeled as 571 Clone Monastrell. And so everyone thought we had Mourvèdre, and then finally everyone collectively was like, this doesn't look quite right, and the leaves don't look quite right, and it tastes different. So, but we've embraced it. I've grown to love it, and figured out how to farm it properly, and also use it in our fermentations. And honestly, I for what we're trying for in this blend, I find it a preferable clone. So they are related, but they definitely have a very distinct characteristics that, compared to Mourvèdre. Oh, actually, if you want to go back, sorry.
Sorry about that.
I was trying to time you.
Yeah. So we do 2 to 3 different clones of Syrah in this blend. And we have 3 clones on the property, but I believe this is mostly 174 and 383 clone of Syrah. And then we have 1 clone, the Alban clone of Grenache, that's in this blend. And then the 1 clone of Graciano, aka 571 Mourvèdre, in this blend as well. You also see we do a lot of co-fermentations. So there's some Viognier in this blend. We did Syrah Viognier co-fermentation that we used for a different wine. And I think I loved slipping in a couple barrels of that into this blend to really round it out and add some complexity. We do about 15% new oak on this. A lot of it is larger format, 350 liter and 500 liter barrels. I think it's a mixture, in this vintage, it was a mixture of Francois Frère, Boot, and probably Mérieux as well. And we do a range of medium plus to heavy toast because we're doing less new oak, and then we're doing the larger format. So really kind of embraces the meatiness and the earthiness of this blend. And then before we move on, I just want to do a quick note of the analysis there for some of the analysis geeks like myself out there. This is typical analysis we'll see, at least on the acidity and pH that we'll see across the vineyard. Often we'll see moderate to high pHs and also fairly high titratable acidity, which is kind of counterintuitive, but we'll see as we go through the presentation why that might be the case. And it really seems to offer a really nice round mouthfeel with, still lively and refreshing acidity. So it's kind of a fun phenomenon for our vineyard. We can go ahead and move on to the next. And of course, couldn't be here without our owner and founder, Jack Messina. His father actually immigrated to the East Coast from Sicily. So wine is definitely has been part of the family since he was young. And then his parents actually met in New York. So the reason for the Hell's Kitchen name is an homage to the area where he grew up in New York. And then of course his son Josh Messina is also a huge part of the process here. So we're definitely family owned and operated. And they're huge drivers behind us pushing the limits on quality in the farming and the winemaking as well. And then I've been here since 2015. So this will be my 7th harvest coming up with the winery. In 2017, we brought in Eric Jensen from a local winery, Booker, and also Tony Biaggi, who Danielle and Jennifer are familiar with. He's great at giving us a little kick in the butt when we need it, or words of inspiration, or some crude joke if you need it as well. So
or some hazing.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of hazing for sure. Yeah.
I used to work with him at Plum Jack.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah, no, actually he just visited us and was giving us some techniques for hazing our new interns. So very important winemaking stuff. It's, you have to do everything a certain way here in the winery. So, and I'm a little text heavy, so I appreciate the patience. This is a good picture of kind of, again, where we're located in Paso Robles. So that's our tasting room and winery. It's in the middle of the vineyard, nestled among the oak trees there. We're actually, the winery is in the back of the tasting room, and our main barrel room is located below the patio and the tasting room. So it's kind of a funky setup, but it's really fun for engaging with our tasting room customers. And it also just makes it so much easier during harvest. If I have any issues, or I want to monitor what's going on out in the vineyard, I just run in any direction and I can pretty much find what I'm looking for. So and also the fruit's coming in very quickly and still very cold, which as a lot of us know is pretty important for the quality of the fruit. And we go to the next slide. So yeah, what makes it's really interesting hearing about all the different soils from the other wineries in this presentation. Ours in particular is a mixture of both quality soil and obviously location. As we saw in the earlier picture with the fog coming over the mountain ranges there, that's in a relationship with our distance from the ocean. We're not very far as the crow flies, but it's obviously a little bit further drive. So we see a huge influence from the Templeton Gap that a lot of people are familiar with, that terminology. We'll see the fog rolling in early in the evening, and usually it rolls out about 10 or 11 in the morning. And we see those huge diurnal shifts that are very important for retention of acidity and quality, sometimes 40 plus degrees between day and night. And then that in combination with the elevation and ample rainfall that we see in our particular sub-AVA of Paso Robles give us the ability to grow various different varieties at high quality. And again, we have calcareous clay loam with limestone boulders. Some of the boulders are really small, and some of them are half a car size. So much like what Todd was showing on his pictures out there. We're in the business of growing grapes and also rocks sometimes is what it feels like. So we're having to pull those out of the vineyard, it seems like every year. And that particular soil has really good water holding capacity because of the clay, but it's also fairly deep and porous. So the roots definitely are encouraged to grow a little bit deeper. And then we also have high pH in our vineyard as well. And so I think that combined with the diurnal shifts in temperature really seem to contribute to that higher acid retention and allow us to hang the fruit a little bit longer and see some freshness in the final wine. And we'll just go over this real quick. This is just the vineyard map. So showing we have basically 5 main soil types on the vineyard, but really it's dominated by the first 2 that are labeled there. Again, they're really just differentiated between higher percentages of limestone and clay and depths of the soil. In some places we do have some hard pan of limestone hard pan and shale hard pan as well. But for the most part, our soils are 6 feet or plus deep. So we have a lot of room for the varieties to grow. And then we are able to do Rhone and Bordeaux varieties on the property, including some oddballs like Tannat and Graciano, which are our honorary candidates for our Rhone program. Let's move this out of the way. So yeah, we are, since 2014, we have dedicated ourselves to farming 100% organically. We're not yet certified, which is something that we're looking at doing, but right now we're just making sure that we're implementing, the organic process and kind of discovering that ourselves. But we're definitely dedicated to farming organically. We also practice a lot of sustainable things as well, including in 17 we put in some solar panels to help offset our power usage in the vineyard. We're also really familiar with the use of soil moisture probes and our leaf barometers to help us stress our plants and hit those quality goals that we're looking for without using or wasting too much water if we have to irrigate. And then every year we evaluate whether we need to irrigate at all, because we do see a decent amount of rainfall every year. And then I'll just touch upon real quick, we do use grape phenolic analysis in the vineyard as well. We find this to be a very useful tool, and it's not, it can sound really scary at first because it does imply that maybe we're making wine, by numbers, as some say, but really it's just a useful tool in the tool belt. We're out there tasting every day, checking normal juice analysis, but we want to make sure that we're picking at full ripeness and differentiating each block or even parts of blocks when it comes to quality and ripeness, and we're not getting to the overripe or jammy characteristics of that fruit that would give us if we hung it for a little bit too long. And lastly, how do we make our wine? So how do we not screw it up once we get it out of the vineyard is really the ticket. Again, we do the phenolic analysis as well as we're out there in the vineyard every day because we can, because of how close we are to the vineyard. And we'll usually pick each of our blocks at least 2 times, sometimes 3 or 4 times, depending on the size of the block, because we're checking to see even different areas or soil types within that block are ripening at different rates. And then we do what we call a triple fruit sorting, which is the first sorting being that we actually tell the crew, don't pick anything that's damaged or underripe or just ugly, and drop it on the ground. So, and then we'll bring it in and we'll do a cluster sorting and then a final berry sorting, as you can see in the picture here. And then the final part after this table that is in the picture, it goes into stainless steel dumping bins, and we fill all of our tanks by gravity by lifting them up with the forklift. So again, we're trying to control the quality all the way through the process until it's in tank, and then we'll implement our fermentation techniques that we would prefer. And then we use a phenolic analysis in the winery also, again, just as another tool to make sure that we can time our pressing properly, or schedule our pressing properly, and also help differentiate our press fractions, and just make sure in the end, especially when it comes to varieties like Grenache, and that we're not over extracting tannin in the final process. And then we use basket press for all of our rosé, white, and red programs as well. Again, we're looking for gentle extraction and try not to extract too much seed tannin also. And that's kind of all I have for that, I believe. I think on the next slide, I have some pictures of, we do some concrete in the winery as well. So these are a couple concrete eggs that we have. We do Syrah in here. We mostly do Grenache. We don't have the ability to ferment in concrete yet, on the skins, but we'll go right into these usually post fermentation, and a portion of a blend, if not 100% of the Grenache, will age for up to 15 months in the concrete.
Beautifully done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Josh, I just want to say the wine, man, it's a really big wine. Definitely very ripe and fresh fruit on the nose, how it matches that. Big chewy tannins, right? But then again, the acidity is just right up front, so you get that and it remains throughout the finish. It's just a really balanced wine, so awesome job.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I know I kind of jumped past this, but it's, at least to me, it's a lot more obvious. But despite being a higher percentage of Syrah, I really like to showcase the Grenache and the Graciano in this blend. And I think that with our particular clones of Syrah, they're not extremely dominant on the nose. They definitely offer a lot of ripe fruit and dark fruit. But you can see that a lot of the spiciness, the earthiness, there's also kind of a soy sauce characteristic that comes through. That is like definitely the Graciano, which is really kind of a fun characteristic of that variety.
Josh, is your tasting room open? Because I'm actually going to be in Paso next weekend. So
we are, yeah. So because we have a lot of outside seating space in that outdoor patio. Yeah, we're open 7 days a week right now, from 11 to 4:30, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, good question.
Did you mute me?
I did earlier, buddy.
I'm gonna come over there and give you. Anyway, how many years have you been the winemaker at Jada?
So I consider since 2017, when I was working with Eric and Tony. We're still working with Tony Biaggi as a consulting winemaker. But I put together, we did all the winemaking and blending on the 2017 wines.
Now, I visited about 3 years ago, and I guess it was, who was the previous guy? Tony?
David Gazmiato.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
That's when the concrete eggs were brand new.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it was right before, because I came in 2015. I worked with David for 2 years, and yeah, so I had a lot of new equipment and new tanks to work with. It was great.
Yeah. Well, how many cases were made of this particular wine?
We made just about 500 cases. This was actually a decent year for us. For the most part, it ranges between 350 to 450 cases on average. But this was a pretty decent yield year for us.
No, it's a lovely, lovely wine.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right.
I want to thank you guys, Jada. Fantastic, delicious, and really cool. I love the Graciano element to this wine. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what it adds and how it mutates in there, but I think there's some little cool vein in there of a floral slash, what did you say the Graciano kind of adds to the wine?
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. There's some floral aspects to it, and I also tend to get sort of as opposed to black pepper, more of like a cayenne pepper soy sauce characteristic. So kind of earthy, and just dark and spicy. So that really shows through. It's actually really, I don't know if this is the case for everyone that has Graciano, especially in the Paso Robles area, but it's actually one of the it has this strange phenomenon where, unlike most grapes where the color is going up, so is your tannin. The tannin actually tends to peak at some point and the color keeps developing. So it's a beautifully dark wine with very low tannin. And so it tends to be an amazing co-fermenter, because when we throw in, say, Syrah in there, all of that tannin will help lock in the color and develop mouthfeel and polymerize. And so on its own, though, if you ferment it, which we do every year, the tannin doesn't get very high at all. and so the color can be a little bit more unstable. But we're able to keep it on skins for sometimes over 30 days, well into maybe 40 days on the skins without over extracting the tannin. So it makes it kind of a really fun blending component, especially. And if we had more, we'd probably do more of a Graciano focused wine, but that'll have to be for the future when we put some more in the vineyard.
Jim, are you in the wine? Is there more harps in the wine industry in your family?
No, so I grew up in the just south of Redding, California. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
Wine capital, yeah.
It's there's actually wineries up there. There's maybe I think 20 to 30 wineries up there, but it gets to about 110. I think last year they had 90 days, well over 100 degrees. So it's not a easy wine growing region. I just got lucky to grow up and down the street from a small winery in what's called Cottonwood, which is where I grew up, and I just made friends with my neighbors who own the place and fell in love with the winemaking while I was in high school. So this has kind of been a passion of mine since I was in high school, and I was lucky to actually make it into the industry and stay in it. So I've been very lucky.
Oh, cool. Good job. Beautiful wine.
Thank you.
We have a really distinguished group here, and I want to thank Jennifer for being on the Zoom with us today and for getting so many of your fantastic brands involved. And I see Jada and RD and Laster are all part of the Vintage Wine Group, Vintage Wine Marketing.
Actually, correction there, Ian. I just want to say we are actually self-distributed. So that is we love Vintage, but we are self-distributed at Laster.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And Ian, I have to say the same. Unfortunately, I think that might have been a mistake as well. We're not currently distributed by Vintage. We are distributed on the East Coast by Kisela Perry Feast. Okay. But that's really our only distribution right now. We're doing everything else in-house.
Well, I made many errors on this sheet today. I'm very apologetic. We moved through hard and fast on this thing. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Hey, it all worked out.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. We do have a number of other people that did get the tasting kits that have been emailing me. They're asking for the video. We do videotape this if anyone wants to visit it or share it. But we plan to get that out, and a thank you email right after this presentation. And if anyone has any questions, please speak up. But I'd love to also use this time to kind of connect with some of the people that are in the trade, that are on the Zoom. We're opening up as a marketplace now, coming out of one of the most radical periods of our lives, and just want to kind of hear what's happening out there. As I know, some restaurants are able to open, some are not. Obviously, 71 above, Catherine, you're on the Zoom. I don't know how things are people talking about being able to do in dining room stuff yet?
Not yet. I think indoor dining's still a ways off for LA, but I mean, we're playing around with some other ideas because we're all getting a little antsy and bored out of our minds. So I think we're going to try to do something at the restaurant here soon.
The helipad on top, maybe the 73rd floor.
Yeah, $10,000 a head if you want to dine up there. Right in the center. It actually, if you're on that helipad, it looks like you walk off the building when you walk off of it, just because it's like you can't see any of the building when you're on there. It's kind of freaky.
Nathaniel Munoz, thank you for joining us. I saw your.
And I have a quick question for Rachel.
Thank you for
you hear me?
Being with us. And Jake, how are things at Gelson's?
Things are good. Very fortunate to be in the industry that I am today. Obviously, we're open, we're essential, and all of our employees are very, very happy to help any of our customers. And we're really trying to bring in and expand the palettes of our customers. It's not all just about the name brand stuff, and to bring in a lot of gems like every single wine on tonight into our stores. Because of our size of our market is it's a perfect size for a lot of you folks out there. So, I love doing these. Thanks for inviting me in.
Thanks for being here. You're a real important pillar. So thank you. I know Lynn Becker, Larry, you're on the Zoom. How are you guys getting ready to open?
Well, we're mostly indoors, so we're not quite getting ready to open yet. But I have a quick question for Rachel. Rachel, is the Lenerth Blanc available in Los Angeles at all?
Yes, it is. If you'd like to taste it, I can drop it off if you'd like.
Well, we'll figure that out. But what is it? I know it's mostly a Roussanne, but what's the blend on it? It's a heavily
So Chateau Lenerth is always going to be Grenache forward. So it's Grenache Blanc at its core, but then it has Roussanne and Claret, and then just a touch of Bourboulon.
Got it. Okay, yeah. Anyway, yeah, Ian, I think we're still months away from Cicada.
Okay.
So we are wide open, really busy. We're seating 150 seats at night times 2. Monty's is going strong.
Tell Larry Levine, Larry Shapiro says hello.
I will.
Tell Larry all of us say hello.
He's anxious to taste again, but we're not quite to that yet. But we're really busy. Come and see us out there. It looks great. It's nice what they did.
Eric, where are you holding court?
There we go. Nope.
Yep, I got you.
Okay. Still waiting to go back to Esther's once they open up again, but trying to find work in the meanwhile that will get me out there on the floor holding court as you.
Yeah.
Looking at a lot of these like Wisconsin, Montana type ranchero type places are looking for people right now. So you might find me out west soon.
All right. That's cool. Scott Torrance, how's the high-end retail market doing?
Yeah, it's a bit new for me in terms of an event like this. I usually sell your vintages 10, 15 years down the road as a career path. And so this is the year where my concept of dealing in secondary market wines pivots to primary market, where we're going to try to talk to our clients about what they've been drinking from us, and now that they've experienced them perhaps when they're in their maturity, here's what they are when they're in their early stages. And so now you can see the path, and therefore the process by which you might want to buy and store and collect. But overall, I mean, we had the one dip, as many of us did, from that March to May period. And then I think from my business, around May is when we saw Asia come back online, and then it's just been kind of going nuts from there. So we haven't really, if anything else, it's made planning very difficult. It's a very interesting market of I've been doing this since almost as long as you, Ian. And can't call, I don't know who to hire. I don't know where I want to pivot. I don't know what, if you have limited eggs in your basket, which ones do you want to play? So what I hear in this market space is, this year was the year we would have been trying to service a lot of wholesale accounts, and we've just kind of pulled back from that. And so my client accounts, my private buyer accounts are supporting most of the business plans so far. But I'd love to get to a space and time where I'd feel more comfortable about who to hire.
Right. Knowing when to pivot and knowing when not to is kind of the task right now. As we're maybe heading towards the finish line and some change. I think, as I could tell you, and with us, we, our little retail operation, when things locked down, delivery got really, really busy. But now that things are opening up, it seems to be kind of, normalizing. Things are kind of going back where people are going to go back out, and so you can overcorrect if you're not careful.
You know?
Yeah, that's right. That's been the most curious part is I've thankfully only overcorrected in some very small areas that are manageable. But I don't, I've been watching you very carefully to see how you're handling the delivery option. I find it to be almost as difficult as trying to ship through the states in the union.
Yeah, I mean it's not easy, but the restaurants too. I mean they with takeout and delivery services, it's just I think that some restaurants appear to be fairly busy, but it's like 1 or 2 people working in that restaurant, not 25, and that's probably straining everybody. Patricia, are you guys involved in day-to-day operations with Fleming's?
Yeah, we've been fully open for the last 4 weeks now. We got the most tables in Pasadena, and we've been pretty much busy every night.
Yeah, I learned that Pasadena and LA are completely disconnected, meaning that Pasadena doesn't need to follow the LA County health guidelines, and Pasadena is like the Wild West over there. They're doing whatever they want to do. So I think you're benefiting from that. Hey, Rick, you don't mind not go to Montana, you just go to Pasadena.
That's true. Well, actually, no, we kind of want some of the people who are coming to Pasadena to stay in their neighborhoods. We kind of like our Pasadena residents. We had a bit of trouble when Pasadena opened up solely. We had, a clientele that we had never seen before. But I mean, now it's okay. I mean, we're just glad everybody else has opened up. And it's been great. I mean, people are eager to get out, and it's kind of funny how indignant people are getting these days because they can't get a reservation.
Interesting. Yeah, it's kind of wild. Anybody could possibly think about being indignant about anything at this point. Just you can't take anything for granted. I mean, try shipping an overnight package somewhere. Try counting on a supplier to have anything in stock. It's going to be a really challenging year, 2021, to get this thing restarted. We're all going to need to be patient. Patrick Comiskey, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Anthony Blue.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it very much. And to everyone else that watches this in the future, please reach out for these vintners and go schedule an appointment, take a little trip. It's a good time if your restaurant is closed to maybe take advantage of this moment to have a moment to go travel and get out and stop yourself from going crazy.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us and all the winemakers for their patience, and wonderful to see you all. We hope that we see you again, and we hope that, and by the way, wines were flippin' spectacular across the board. I don't think I would change a thing in the order of the presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And it's really, I'm very happy to have you all. So thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing everybody very, very soon.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you all.
Thank you for
Thank you all. Nice to see you all.
Bye. Bye.